is Tiffany and this is my channel, Hoosier Handmade. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In today's video, we're talking all about sewing down the stash. And I might have a little bit of a confession time. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Please consider subscribing, give this video a thumbs up, and comment down below. I would love to know what you think about this topic that we're getting ready to talk about today. If you are already subscribed to my channel, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch today. It really does mean so very much to me. So this seems like the year of everyone wanting to focus on sewing their stash fabric and stash patterns. And I am definitely one of those. I have it on my Make 9 to focus on sewing that stash. So sewing all of this beautiful fabric that I have in my sewing room and then using my patterns that I currently have. At the beginning of the year, when I made my Make 9, I really wasn't planning on stopping the buying, but I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So Angela from Just Me and My Fabrics started a wonderful hashtag. It is called hashtag Stash Sewdown 2023. I will put it right here for you. It's a wonderful initiative to focus in on using your stash, whether it be fabric or patterns or both. So I messaged her and I asked if I could jump on board with her hashtag and really use it to help motivate me into using my stash, and she was so kind and said of course that I could. So I've featured it a couple of times on my Friday sews. I probably mentioned it in my Make 9 video. It really has been a big focus of mine to start using my stash fabrics and my patterns. Various reasons that we're all doing that this year, but a big one for me is that I'm literally running out of room. I am running out of room for fabric and it's becoming overwhelming in this sewing room. My sewing room is not big to begin with. You can kind of peep right there, a queen size bed that is in this sewing room. So it's kind of closing in on me and I need to get a handle on it. So that is why I am focusing in on my stash this year. And then on top of Angela's challenge, my husband issued a separate challenge to me. He issued a 90-day challenge for me to go 90 days without buying fabric or patterns. No fabric and no patterns for 90 days. And if I could accomplish that, then he would reward me with a set amount of dollars to go on a little shopping spree and kind of have some retail therapy. So I'm making this video today to talk to you about how this is going for me, how I've been progressing. And today, Valentine's Day, which I think today's Valentine's Day. Yeah, the 14th. Yeah, Tuesday the 14th is 1 month that I have went without buying fabric and patterns. And that's a pretty big deal for me. So I wanted to kind of just give a little wrap up of my month here in this little video and kind of give you some pros and cons to what I'm feeling. Maybe treat this kind of like a little therapy session itself. I'm just gonna sit here on the proverbial couch and share my feelings and maybe give you a few tips and tricks if you are along on this journey with me. Not that I'm inviting this on anybody, but it has been enlightening and really it's good for me. I would never have agreed to the challenge if I also did not agree with him that there's a lot of fabric in this room, there's a lot of patterns in this room, so I really do need to focus on them. And then in a little bit, I'm going to talk about my stash itself. So in Angela's video, which I'm going to try to link up above and down in my description box, so her kickoff for her hashtag Stash Sewdown 2023, I'm going to link that video. She does a little confession time in there and she talks about her stash, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm trying to do this for some accountability and to give myself a little more push in the direction of using my stash. So motivation all the way around is what I'm going for here. So let's talk about that stash. Let's just get right down to the nitty-gritty here in the beginning. So I do have quite a large stash. Now, before I get into my numbers, and I do have some hard numbers to give you, I wanted to just briefly point out a couple videos that I have made in the past about my pattern organization and my fabric organization. If I had not implemented these organizational kind of processes within my sewing regime, then I would not be able to give you these numbers now. The only way that I would ever know how much fabric is in here, how many yards are in here, what kind of fabric is in here is through that organizational stuff. So I have a series of 3 videos actually called my organizational series. I will try to link that up above and definitely down below in the description box. Go check those out if you are interested in how I organize my fabric. I'm not telling you have to do it like me. Maybe you're just nosy and would like to see how someone else organizes. I love those kind of videos. So I'm going to link those down below. And they really have been super instrumental in helping me just research for this video, research for what I really need to be using out of my stash, and that it really has been so instrumental in. And I just wanted to highlight those for you guys real quick. So let's talk fabric. And when I'm talking fabric, I'm not going to be talking anything about the quilting side of my my sewing world. I do have a lot of fabrics. I'm looking over there because it's on the shelving over there. I was a quilter before. I was a garment sewist, so I do have a lot of quilting fabric. I have collections. I have a lot of collections because you need more fabric for a big quilt, and mostly what I make are bigger quilts. So I have a lot of collections, so I have a lot of yardage and pre-cuts and that kind of thing, and that is not included in these numbers that I'm getting ready to give you. What I'm giving you fabric-wise is garment sewing fabric. Now there might be some cotton in there, which I'm not going to go down to get into the nitty-gritty of what fabric types I have, how many French terries I have, how many 100% cottons I have. We would be here forever. I'm not going to do that today, but these numbers are definitely from my garments, the fabric that I have marked for garment sewing. So let's just see those numbers, shall we? So using my app, using those organizational processes that I have, I looked into my app and I looked at all the unique bolts of fabric. When I say a bolt of fabric, I mean a bolt that looks like this. This is one of the bolts of fabric that I just chose out of the piles. So you might recognize this. I used this for Addie's dress not too long ago. But this is how I fold fabric. Again, all that information is in those videos. Within here is a comic book board. That is how I roll them. I roll them onto comic book boards. And that's what I call a bolt. So when I refer to a bolt, that's what I mean. Not an actual bolt of fabric like you would find in Joann's or Hobby Lobby or something. So how many bolts do I have in this one little room? Let's just see. I have 353 unique bolts of fabric. Yeah, that's a lot. That's just garment fabric. 353. So how many yards are we talking? And my yardage varies, obviously. I have anywhere from like 1 yard of fabric on a bolt all the way up to 5. Some things I have like 8 yards of if I've bought a lot of it because I know I want to make a flowy dress. So my yardage varies definitely over the bolts, but total yardage in my stash right now is 696 yards. Yeah, I'm not lying. Not lying. I'm putting it out all out here on the table for you. Complete honesty, 696 yards. My husband has reminded me over and over again that we could lay all of my fabric out across almost 7 football fields. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, is there any other reason that I need to get using this stash? Where is it? It's all up on my shelving. Some of it's on the bed actually because I just don't have any place to put it. So Yeah, these are like glaring red lights, right? So that's telling me that I need to get into this stash. So now let's talk about patterns. And I love gathering patterns. I love buying patterns. I love shopping for patterns. And I have a wide variety of all kinds of patterns. So I have a lot of big 4 patterns, or I guess big 5 is what they're called now. I also have a lot of indie patterns. I love indie patterns. I love making indie patterns, but I love collecting big 4, big 5 patterns. Probably because they're so readily available here in the US. Joann's has the $1.99 sales, and those are so tempting, and it's easy to buy a lot of patterns. So in my app, again, I have a separate app for my patterns, refer to the videos. I went and did a little bit of calculations, and here's how many patterns I have. So total number of patterns is 480. 480 patterns. Out of those, broken up into big 5, big 4, big 5, mostly big 4, because if you're counting the 5th of the big 5, I only actually have 1 of those. But for the big 5, I have 319. 319 big 4 patterns, 9 unique brands. So you have like your McCall's, your Simplicity, your New Look, Berta, Butterick, all those. There's 9 different brands within that. And then my indie patterns, I have 161 of my independent patterns that I have mostly in PDF version. I have a few that I have counted as like a paper pattern, but it's still an independent brand, so I went ahead and counted those. Yeah, 161. So out of the 161, I have 32 unique brands that make up the 161 total. 480 is a lot of patterns in one small sewing room. Have I made 480 garments? No, not even close. I think I did actually make almost 200 things last year between sewing for myself and sewing for others, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I have not used half of the patterns in this room. So those are just some honest to goodness, laying it out on the line numbers for what's actually in my sewing room. You don't have to do anything with that. I'm just trying to be accountable. I'm trying to be honest and kind of just wake myself up a little bit. So let's talk about my month of no pattern buying, no fabric buying. Obviously, I'm not hurting for fabric or patterns. There are a lot of things in this room that I need to get my hands on. Let's talk about how I've done in January. So January was when I made my Make 9, the 1st of January, and I wanted to focus in on my fabric and my patterns. So how did I do over the month of January? How many yards of fabric did I actually make it through? So I made 9 things throughout the month of January, and I was able to get out of my stash 16 yards. So I was really kind of proud of that, you guys. I know looking at 600, almost 700 yards is a huge number, but we're trying to take those small bites out of that big number. So 16 yards for the month of January made me feel pretty good. I can feel a lightening of my spirit already. That's one of the pros that I have for doing this kind of stash challenge. It's really making me feel accomplished and giving me a more lighter feeling. It's kind of like when you clean out your closet, or maybe you clean out a cabinet and you can get rid of stuff and you have that light feeling. That's what I'm getting from being able to sew through 16 yards of fabric. So let's get into those pros and cons of doing this stash challenge here in the month of January, and especially that 90-day challenge that I have made it through a month now. So I've done my first 30 days. And let's see some pros and cons. So the first pro that we've talked about, almost this whole video now, is taking a hard look at my actual stash. So pulling up that app and actually seeing how many yards are in this room, it really shook me up. Like I was astonished. I was dumbfounded. I was like, how did that happen? So really, it is a pro to me, even though there was some mixed feelings while I was doing it. It's a pro to get into your stash and start digging around in there, seeing what you have, falling in love again with fabrics that you haven't seen in a while. That's amazing. I've found some fabrics, I'm like, oh, I remember when I bought that, or I remember when I found that online and I just fell in love with it. Those kind of emotions, going through those emotions again, amazing. Now, some things I found I'm not in love with anymore, and we might deal with those later in the year in a destashing kind of way, but for the most part, it's definitely been a pro to get into my stash. My my patterns as well. I'm discovering patterns that I had put aside that I fell in love with, obviously, and bought, but I've put them aside because I was just too busy with other things. They kept piling up and they got buried. So another pro is bringing those patterns back up to the top, having the time now to focus in on patterns that I really had forgot about and had just buried. So that's definitely another pro. The next pro is, as I said, that feeling of accomplishment and that you're making headway with your stash as you slowly sew through them. And I might be slow or I might be fast compared to you, and that is totally fine. It is completely personal how fast you can sew through your stash. Any progress at all is going to give you a feeling of accomplishment, or yeah, that feeling, that light feeling where you feel like a little bit of the load has been lifted off, and it really just gives you a fresh new outlook on your sewing. Let's switch to the cons. There have been a few cons that I've noticed this month with not buying any fabric and not buying any patterns, although what I'm wearing today is a new to me pattern. This is the Styla Reine. I did a little mini review of it in my in one of my latest Friday Sews videos. If you want to check that out, I'll link it down below. But this was a free pattern. Now, it just came out in January, so I went ahead and snatched it up, and because it was free, it didn't count against my no buying fabric and patterns. I didn't have to buy this one, so I did add it to my stash. So this helped me a little bit to lighten my I don't know, kind of not discouragement necessarily, but you kind of just get a little bit down. I love to shop. I love to shop for fabrics. I love to shop for patterns. And I was experiencing a little bit, especially here toward the end of January, that restless feeling like I want to go shopping, I want to go check out Joann's and Hobby Lobby. It's might be their sale week. I'm missing out on some sales. So I kind of got those feelings, and being able to pick up a free pattern and sew that up and it worked out so wonderfully really helped to lighten my spirit. So definitely the con that I'm in a roundabout way talking about is that kind of discouraging feeling where you want to go shop and you know that you can't. So the little solution that I found for that was to find some neat free patterns. The other kind of con that I've kind of come in contact with here recently is a lack of, I guess, a lack of sojo, a lack of motivation and inspiration. So I'm a person that loves to go to Joann's and Hobby Lobby or look at fabric online like Olga's Closet or Millie Mae Fabrics, and I like to pull inspiration from what I'm buying in the moment. Well, hindsight, looking back, if I had not accumulated this stash like I had, I could still be doing that. But because I'm trying to focus on the stash, I'm not going to Joann's and Hobby Lobby and looking online like I was. So that inspiration piece that I was pulling from my shopping trips, it's not there. It's not there anymore because I'm not going out there and doing that shopping. So I was lacking direction. I was lacking inspiration. I would like to go to Joann's and look through the patterns and get a project that I was going to go jump in and do. Some people call it mood sewing, on the spot sewing, kind of like in the moment inspiration. I am affected by that kind of thing. So I found myself really just lacking the inspiration kind of in January. Now I did sew a lot in January. 9 things is a lot for me. So obviously I was able to pull it together, and let's talk about some of those tips and tricks that I've found along the way, and so that I have been able to pull myself together here in January. So I've already mentioned a couple, like finding free patterns to scratch the itch, I guess you could say, to give you that shopping feeling without having to actually buy anything, and that is good. But also just staying away from Joann's and Hobby Lobby, and trying to stay off websites like Millie Mae Fabrics and Olga's Closet, Fabric Mart Fabrics, which I love to browse. Staying away from the temptation is one of the biggest tips that I have coming out of January. I just have not been shopping. I have not been going to the places of temptation. Even though here at the end I've really been kind of itching to go, I'm just trying to stay away. And if you're not in the situation to be buying fabric and patterns, if you're not actually in the store, or if you're not opening the website, you're not going to be buying fabric and patterns. So that's really worked for me to limit my proximity to those temptations, and that's probably the biggest thing that's helped me this month. Also helped me to go into my stash and actually touch my fabric. So I know I talked about my app, and that is really great to look at a glance, but actually going into my room, my sewing room, getting down some fabric and actually touching it, unfolding it a little bit, seeing what kind of fabric it is, really coming in contact with it has also provided some motivation. And I've kind of found now that I'm doing a swap between letting the pattern lead or letting the fabric lead. A lot of times I would let my pattern be the one to lead my direction, and that led me down a lot of fabric shopping, because I would look at a pattern and I would say, oh, I need 4 yards of fabric for this dress. So I don't have 4 yards of fabric, that kind of fabric, in my stash, so I'll just go to Joann's and buy it. Well, I've kind of swapped that thinking now, and I have started with the fabric. So I've pulled down a couple yards of French terry. What can I make with a couple yards of French terry? So that gets some critical thinking going, and I've kind of swapped the way that I set up my projects now, and it really has been motivating to me to use up more of my stash, because I'm picking the stash fabric first. So that is also a tip. Get into your stash, weed through that fabric, actually feel your patterns. If you have a catalog book, look at the catalog book, however you catalog your patterns. It really does help to actually get in there and remind yourself that you have 700 yards of fabric and 480 patterns. So the feeling of, I don't have anything to do, I don't have any, I don't have any direction. Get in there and mess with what you have, work with what you have, play with what you have, and the inspiration will most of the time come to you. So as I said, this is just my first 30 days. So we'll see how I do at the 60-day mark and then the 90-day mark. I would like to do updates every month on the anniversary of when the challenge started, which is the 14th. So next month on the 14th, I will hopefully have another video. Hopefully I will be as successful as January has been. January has been successful here, and maybe it'll just get easier. Maybe the more you do something, it'll become more like a routine and it'll get easier. We'll see. So let me know down in the comments below what you think about all this. It's a big challenge. Are you trying to use your stash fabrics and patterns, or either or do you think I'm just completely crazy? And that's totally okay too. I'm doing this to try to help myself out and trying to keep myself motivated as well. So let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you like this kind of content, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.